Okay, everybody, hello. It's the 4th of February, and this is our screencast as we continue to look at the period between the two world wars. We'll be looking at the politics in Europe and the United States. Each of the major participants in Europe were devastated by the loss of life. The only different country was the United States, who was in a much stronger position after the war as the only superpower. However, the United States is increasingly returning to isolationism, and they're unwilling to engage in Europe's troubles. That means even the United States did not ratify the Treaty of Versailles nor join the League of Nations. Europe is shattered. The loss of life, the economic devastation have all played a horrible toll. This is a picture of the participants in the Peace Conference of Paris. It brought forth 5 treaties, the most important of which was the Treaty of Versailles and the formation of the League of Nations. The United States does not ratify either. The Congress refuses to ratify Versailles, and part of that was joining the League of Nations, which really hurt Europe, as America just was having a hands-off thing. Kind of the attitude is, we're done. We're not getting involved anymore. We bailed you out, and we're on our own. You go your way, we go mine. Versailles was a disastrous treaty. It was badly conceived and formed out of hatred, understandable hatred, but it was a short-sighted treaty. In Britain, in France, and in Germany, economic unrest follows the war, political instability. There is a growing rise of communism in all of Europe. Socialism is rising, and countering that is nationalism and traditionalism in the European countries. In Britain, you have the Labour Party joins with the Liberal Party, and they look like they're going to take over. It's a socialist movement. They abandon the middle class, who do not want socialism, and the middle class joins the conservatives, who mostly included the upper class farmers and professionals. And this brings about a time period where the Conservative Party does hold sway in England, but Labour Party and Conservative Party, even today, they are very touch and go. They alternate in times of power. Because of this domination, at times was split between labor interests, which is more socialistic, and conservative, which is more free market approach. England or the United Kingdom has adopted many policies that are much more socialist than, say, for example, those of the United States. Because again, it's the idea is that when labor is in control, they adopt more socialist policies, and the conservatives will come and they'll kind of pull back, or at least hold the line. But the increase is a more socialist policy as a whole in the United Kingdom. In France, most of northern France is absolutely in ruins because of the war. The French military and the civilian casualties are astounding, as well as the material damage. Political factions arise, and this arises between groups that are more communist, groups that are more socialist, and those that are much more nationalistic and traditional. It leads to, and they have many small parties. This leads again to these coalition governments where you have different groups trying to cobble together something, but it's very ineffective in the long term. There's no direction for France. It's all over the place. Political division and scandal mark this period. Germany, actually, in some ways, is worse. Germany had suffered the most deaths compared to the two. The land was not impacted, but the economy was crushed. Versailles is hated by the Germans, and in many ways, rightly so. It's a horrible treaty. You have, because of this bitterness, this provides some unity, but the rivalry between the communists and socialists and supporters of a new republic, and then hardcore nationalists who didn't like the new republic and wanted to go back to pre-World War I rule, breaks out in fighting in the cities in 1918 and 1919. It's eventually put down by a group of really conservative traditionalists who support strong nationalism and the old regime prior to World War I. It's put down in 1920, but you can see if you have a civil war breaking out after a crushing military defeat, how divided Germany was. In the United States, the economy slumps after the war, but then it picks up strongly. The big fear is that there is some growth of communism and some support of communism. It's called the Red Scare. This was put on people who were from parts of Europe where communism had gained some traction. And the United States reacts to it. They really push down against this. The government really goes against it, but also the people do not want communism. The United States has a very strong dislike for communism back in that time, and for the most part, has a strong dislike for communism today. And even some socialist things are very strongly fought against because it's seen as a gateway to communism. What the United States does is it deports thousands of people from these countries who are suspected of being communists, and they ban immigration from those countries, as well as they had banned immigration from China and Japan. And the question is, this is something that does happen in the United States. It's happening recently. It's very controversial with immigration trends. There's a couple of questions I'd like to show you, and they are for extra credit, so I'm going to highlight them. And I've listed 3 bonus questions right here. These are extra credit. You don't have to send in an assignment or anything. What I'd like you to do is just answer, reply to the post, or send me a private message on Hangouts. It'll be worth 5 points if you do them. Just remind me that you did them if you don't see your points on the board right away. But typically I'll ask you, where do you want the points? Probably sending to me on Hangouts is a better idea. So what 3 political trends typically fought for power in Europe between the war? One word starts with an N, the other word starts with a C, the other word starts with an S. Give an example of how the United States still changes immigration policy based on current political issues. We banned people from Europe. Has there been travel bans, or actually, I'm sorry, immigration bans in the recent, say, 20 years from certain parts of the world? And why did the war hurt the economies of Europe more than it did the United States? And that should be something you can piece together from the amount of time that people were involved in the war, the number of people who were involved in combat, and where was the war fought. Other than that, that's for today. Have a great, rougher day.